An FDA panel will vote on whether or not to recommend approving the first drug made from the marijuana plant.
They looked at multiple sclerosis and found that it was, in fact, effective for treating spasms, muscle tightness, and pain.
My big idea worth sharing is that medicinal cannabis can be the healthcare success story of our lifetimes, but only if we all engage in learning the truth and ask our federal government to end prohibition of cannabis.
I went for my eye exam, and I'm pre-glaucoma, and the pressure on my eyes are like 15 to 17, the pressure. All of a sudden now they're down to 12, 13 pressure in there. It reduced the pressure of my eyes. I'm diabetic, and all of my A1C and my daily glucose testing, all the numbers all came up low. I used to get back spasms during the day, and I'm not having the back spasms.
It's been shown to have anti-inflammatory components, anti-spasticity. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that's coming out that potentially that it has neuroprotective components to it. In addition to, there are some cancers where it's been anti-tumoral, which is really exciting.
These people have been on prescription meds for years, and either that therapy has stopped working, or they've needed to find, they've heard and read anecdotally about medical marijuana and the benefits of it, and they're slowly becoming believers. I met a woman from Bourne that was in our waiting room one day, and I said, why? And she said, and she pulled out her hands and she showed me how arthritic they were, and she goes, I finally broke down in December of this year, got my card, and it's been the best winter I've ever had. The voters approved in 2012 medical marijuana, and then in 2013 the state put into effect an application process. We submitted an application as medical marijuana of Massachusetts, and we then applied, and we were successful in receiving 3 applications that were approved. And we also had the highest score out of all the other applicants.
Well, I'm the co-founder of Triple M, and I'm also the general counsel and compliance officer. It entails, in terms of the compliance officer, making sure that we're fully compliant with all the Massachusetts regulations, and that includes inventory, our seed to sale, making sure that all of the plants are tagged and tracked all the way through cultivation to harvesting, from dry and trim, coming up with a cultivation batch that you weigh what's actually been harvested, and then you have to account for how that moves through the facility all the way to the point of sale. So at the end of the day, everything that's gone out the door can be tracked all the way back up to an individual plant that started 12 weeks before the sale.
So this is our propagation room, and what we do here is we've started our seeds back in August, and we've grown all our mother plants out here, and about every 2 weeks we come in and we take a cutting off of these plants and we put them into these cloners over here to grow roots. These were just taken, so they don't have any roots on them right now, and in about 5 to 7 days they will grow roots. Once they have roots, we will put them into rock wool, which is over here. These were just planted into the rock wool cubes just a few days ago, right out of the cloners. So in about a week or so, 2 weeks maybe, we'll get roots out the bottom and the plant will grow up to this point. So after this stage, once they get up to the size that we want in our propagation room, the plants are actually under 18 hours of light here, 6 hours of darkness. It keeps them in a constant vegetative state, so they're always growing. They never go into flower in this room. And once we feel that they're large enough to go into flower, we bring them into the next stage, which is in the next room. You want to go in there? So this is one of our flowering rooms. We have 4 flowering rooms at this point. So what we're trying to do is we have an 8-week cycle for flowering, and every 2 weeks we're trying to plant, grow for 8 weeks, and then harvest. So every 2 weeks one of these rooms is being harvested of the 4. So what you saw back in propagation were the rock wool cubes with the little plants. We bring them right in and we put them down in these trays. Their roots grow right through, and everything's fed from underneath hydroponically. We also have a soil room, but predominantly right now we're growing hydroponically.
My name is Ethan Avdrakis. I'm the head grower here at Triple M. I guess I'm kind of in charge of overseeing all aspects of cultivation from seedling stage all the way up till it's packaged for purchase. Like after the plant is grown, we kind of pick the harvest time, you know, so we can choose to harvest it a little bit early to give it more of an up high, or we can choose to let it go a little bit longer, harvest it late, which will give it a more of a sedative kind of feel to it. So we can kind of choose what way a plant is going to affect you based on harvest times as well as genetics. So once it's cut down, we break it up into chunks that allow for a more even dry. We take off all the big fan leaves, and then we hang it up and we let it dry for about 10 days to 2 weeks, and then we take it down and we trim it further. We remove kind of all the little leaves that have trichomes and crystals on it, really maximize the amount of trichomes are on that bud before it's sold. And then once we trim it down, we put it into containers that control the humidity, kind of like cigars. You want it at like a perfect humidity. You don't want it too wet because you'll get mold, too dry, and it's a little bit of a rough smoke. So we try to control exactly where that humidity is, and it stays in those containers right up until the day that it gets packaged, which is usually no longer than a week before it gets sold. We try to really keep them in the larger bins and control that humidity before it gets packaged for sale.
There's a lot of science that goes into particularly the processing aspect of it. So Keith, who you met, who's the director of processing, he has 2 different extraction methods that he uses. One is solventless, which we're really excited about. That's with a rosin press. So just through the application of heated steel plates and applying an incredible amount of tonnage, you can actually have the oil from the cannabis ooze out. And that in and of itself is a concentrate. It's a rosin. We sell 3 different types of it. And it's amazing because it's pure cannabis oil. No solvents are used. But the amount of science that has to go into that he actually created the machine, or he extrapolated from what was currently a market where you could do 1 bud at a time. And he's extrapolated that out so that he can do 14 buds at a time. It's just an incredible efficiency.
What happens in here is we make non-smokable applications of cannabis. Tinctures, which go under your tongue, or capsules, which you eat, or topical creams. And we're also now making lozenges for people that it also goes through your tongue and through your cheeks. And we do that by extracting the resins from the plant and then process them in such a way that we can add them to these various applications. And all the products that we make in here, in general, we make in 3 types of the same capsules, tinctures, or vape pens. We make a THC one, we make a CBD one, and we make what we call a 1-to-1, which is half and half.
So we're currently offering 9 different final medical marijuana products for our patients, and each one of those products is either a THC dominant, a CBD dominant, or 1-to-1 profile. And as a patient, it all depends on what you need and why that would be important for you to have one of those options. So THC, just in terms of general overview, is the psychotropic, the psychoactive cannabinoid component, and that's what gives patients a high. From a medicinal perspective, what patients have reported is that it's helped them with relaxation, with reducing stress, with taking down anxiety, stimulating appetite, reducing pain. CBD, conversely, is actually non-psychoactive. There's no high to it. But patients have actually reported as well that they've received benefits of relaxation, more of a body relaxation. It's been shown to have anti-inflammatory components, anti-spasticity. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that's coming out that potentially that it has neuroprotective components to it. All of our products are offered in a 1-to-1 ratio, which, as it suggests, it's an equal or close to equal ratio of THC and CBD, but on a lower level than if you were to have a THC dominant strain. You would perhaps want to be having something in the high teens or of a percentage, or 20s, or maybe even 30%. When you're having a 1-to-1, like the strain that we're growing here called Triple Medihaze, it's just about 7% THC and 7% CBD. So the interesting thing about that is that you're not, although there is a psychoactive component to it, it's not something that's going to impair you significantly. And people who might benefit from something like that would be somebody who maybe someone who takes like a Tylenol PM. So there's some aches and pains. They also have a little difficulty getting to sleep. Instead of taking a pill that impacts your liver every night, you might want to try a 1-to-1 ratio and see how that impacts you as well. So I think Triple M stands out because we have made a very focused viewpoint of creating true medicine. So we offer all the products in the THC, the CBD, the 1-to-1. We have the whole plant extract because we're looking for the entourage effect, not just delivering the distillate, the cannabinoid aspect to it, but making sure that the patient has a whole experience. We're supported, our investors are primarily physicians, and they gave us the direction of, we want this to be a very medicinal approach. We're so excited to come to Mashpee. There's such a need and an interest, and over maybe 35% of the patients that are coming to Plymouth right now are actually from the Cape. And I know that I have relatives that live in the Cape, and they'll be so happy not to have to come over the bridge.
A lot of people look at the location of Mashpee and see it fenced in a guardhouse, but that's what, at the time, Rodney Collins was the police chief, and the selectmen and the police chief said we didn't want, access where young adolescents could be skateboarding through the parking lot or putting graffiti out there or asking people to buy product for them. So that's why it's fenced in the guardhouse. No one can get on that property in Mashpee unless they have a medical marijuana card or a guest to the facility for some reason. The product will be moved from this location here in Plymouth. It will be sold from there, and then we'll replenish the inventory as needed. And we feel that this location and the facility is very secure. Mashpee was willing to allow us to come into their community. We're guests. I mean, that's why we have Jim Vaccaro and Mary LeClaire on board, so the town people know that they have local representation if there's any problems. We feel that the zone that they put us in, being a dead end, light industrial or heavy industrial in some regards in that location, we won't be a problem for the community in any way, shape, or form. The good news is we're the 22nd dispensary to open, and from all we know from our security personnel and from reading the newspapers and talking to other people, my counterparts, is that there haven't been any security issues at those facilities. So I think Mashpee was right and Plymouth was right to make us go well and beyond what's needed because it was so new, and they were taking a leap of faith with us. And I think the level of security, makes the patient feel safe that when they're coming here to make a transaction and leaving here with medical marijuana, they feel very safe in doing so.
I worked as a registered nurse, primarily for the geriatric population, and I found over the last year and a half that there were many patients coming in inquiring about becoming a patient, or that they were using the product and wanted to start tapering their pharmaceuticals. It's a much safer alternative for them, especially the geriatric population. As general manager of the Mashpee location, my primary goal there is to make sure that the staff is very knowledgeable and able to educate everyone coming in, if they're a first-time patient or someone that has been using the product for several years, as it's important to always be keeping track of what it is that you're treating and how effective it is for them, because change is needed at some times.
When people come in to visit the dispensary for the first time, they're pleasantly surprised by what they're seeing. A lot of them are not expecting it to be such a clean, well-lit environment. It's very welcoming. All the employees are very welcoming to the patients. It's just a really pleasant experience for a first-time patient to come into a facility as nicely done as we have done here. I have recommended family members, my mom included, who's turning 80 next year, to treat her arthritis. She is a stage 4 cancer survivor. She really is so interested in this, and she's pursuing getting her card.
Hopefully the benefits of it medically will far exceed the perceived benefits of cannabis as just a way of getting high, and because it goes well beyond that. And the difference in products between what a medical patient takes and what a recreational patient takes is really no different. And we have created product here, as Leanne will talk about, that allows someone not to get just high, but also get the medical benefits of it. And that's really been our mission.
But I think 5 years from now, it's going to be much more mainstream. I think towns will feel much more comfortable once they see how it's rolled out in their town, either on a medical level or recreational, and that'll give people comfort that this is not reefer madness, that there is going to be, it's an acceptable social experience.
I can certainly foresee this replacing pharmaceuticals in the future, even something as common as Tylenol and Advil.